Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining me. I've got Daren Martin, the culture architect, on our show with us. Daren, welcome to the show.
So excited about doing the show with you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. You've got a great following, but for anybody that hasn't heard of you yet, give us an idea of what you do with your keynote speaking, being the culture architect, and really the first company culture podcast and other ventures that are coming our way.
So I am the culture architect, and I obviously talk a lot about company culture. I would say outside of that, Michael, one thing that is out there, but I don't normally lead with this, but I also consider myself a bit of an evolutionary. And I say evolutionary rather than revolutionary because revolutions tend to scare CEOs and business leaders. It sounds a little too threatening. But I think we're going through a massive shift in work, the way we think about work, the way, when you look at what we have now as traditional just kind of workplaces and workplace environments, the engagement rate at a typical company is 29% or lower. And when I do my keynotes, I talk a lot about a company of owners. That's a theme that resonates with people at every level, because who doesn't want a company where everybody acts like owners? But when I ask big groups of C-level execs, I was just in Houston with several groups, and I ask them what they think the average high engagement rate is at a typical company. I don't get typically as high as 29%. I get 15%, 10%, 5%. And that just tells me that we've got a real disconnect. There are a lot of people that go into work on a Monday morning and just drag themselves in. And then they walk out on Friday doing, thank God it's Friday. I think there's a big shift that is happening and has to happen within the workplace if we are going to be as profitable, as vibrant as a work culture. So I'm really out to drive that evolution. I do that under the guise of the culture architect and the company of owners and all those ideas. But I think we're going through a massive shift, and I'm rallying other evolutionaries around me to help make that happen.
I do that myself, and that is one of the big wrestling points. If you're going to try and keep your company on the cutting edge and morale as high as possible, I don't know how many people want to follow along, because I think making along your line about making them owners, making each person that works with you an owner by allowing them to be a shareholder in the company, because so many people who aren't, there's just, as they say in other industries, a draw dog. They're just there for the check. I think that is one key that really keeps people wanting to say, well, what's our ROI on everything they do? How does that fit within the guidelines of what you're telling the people that come to you for advice?
So first of all, I've never heard the term draw dog. You're going to have to tell me more about that later, but I call them zombie employees. I think it's probably the same thing, just there to get a paycheck. But the reality is, when you talk about companies and profitability and et cetera, people look at, if I walked into a CEO or walked into a business leader and said, listen, we can get a 50% cut in your effective tax rate, they would say, I've got a thing. You do this thing, and that's going to happen. They would be clawing at that. They couldn't get there fast enough. I think what we're missing is that there is a much larger, massive tax that is being implemented on companies every single day. I'm talking small businesses to big Fortune 100 companies, because of the draw dogs, because of the zombie employees. And it's costing companies billions of dollars every year. In fact, there was a study done a while back that out of Harvard, so it's got to have credibility. It's a Harvard study, but basically said that when companies get the culture piece right, over the course of 10 years, they have a 765% impact to the positive to their net profitability. Now, just wrap your mind around that. So when I talk about this tax, this is, if you have a 29% engagement level at your company and you could get that to, let's say, 99%, you're always going to have that 1%, somewhat lunatic fringe, although I think you could get 100% engagement. I've seen companies that do it. But if you're able to do that, you just, that tax of 71% that you've had from just low performance, no performance, poisonous employees, all of a sudden now, man, you really start hitting your stride. And yet so few execs pay attention to this piece of it. They look at the financials. It's not represented in the financials. You know, some really sharp CPA needs to come up with a engagement index that would indicate how much that's costing them. And I guarantee you it'd become the #1 focus in the financials every month, because it is the biggest impact. I'm not sure I even answered your question, but you got me on a rant here, Michael.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll do many more interviews. But before we part ways, I've got your books up here. I wanted you to give us a synopsis on each book that I peel off. Let's start with that first one.
So Company of Owners has been just a runaway hit with people at all levels of companies. We've got multiple companies that are buying that for all of their employees, including Access. I say here locally, but they're obviously an international company. They give it to every employee. It really struck a nerve because it's a super quick, easy read. If I told you how many words are actually in it, you know, I'd be embarrassed. But I've seen CEOs and individual contributors read it cover to cover on a plane ride, but it really hits at the core of the changes that need to be made. So Company of Owners Whiteboard is a hand-drawn, handwritten, it's the one right behind it, hand-drawn, handwritten business book that is just business models. You can open it up to any page and get some sort of inspiration or spark or idea from it, or a management tool that you can share. Actually, the side story, that one's actually been published in Thai. It's my first foreign right publication. And Leonard Cohen, the late great singer Leonard Cohen, loved it so much he sent me an autographed copy of his poetry book. So that's kind of the claim to fame on that one. Nice. The Sync right behind that one is about leaving the world better than you found it, and what would it look like. It's really meant to be more of just an individual's book. Anybody can read this, whether they work or don't work, or no matter what the context. But it's also had a big impact with companies. What if everybody in the company focused on leaving things better than they found it? And then the last one is Beached Whale. It's about companies that are sitting on a sand dune. You can see the poor guy on the cover there. That big, huge companies, lots of bureaucracy, missed the memo that the world as we know it is over. And I go through and chronicle, hey, you're beached, here's the characteristic, how do you unbeach, more importantly, how do you get unstuck? I don't like to share problems without coming along with some kind of solution. So the first indicator, by the way, that you're a beached whale company is if you walk around and there's a Dilbert cartoon on every cubicle. Yeah. So try that at home. You'll see how many people. I had a millennial tell me recently, he said, no, dude, it's not. He said the reason you can tell you're a beached whale company is because you just said the word cubicle. And I thought, wow, how the times are changing. So that's 4. There's many more on the way.
Great. All right. Daren, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. We'll do it again, and we can drill down into some of the other fine points that you have in the books later, okay?
Looking forward to it. Next time I'll make the drive. We'll do it in studio.
You got it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome. All right, you've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.